Hey there, I know you're on a journey from grief to growth, just like I am, and you may be looking for tools to help you live a more soul aligned life. Well, head over to my Grief to Growth store. It's your one stop shop for inspiration, for healing, and for transformation. Inside there, you're going to find some free resources to help you get started. You'll find guided meditations to calm your mind and reconnect with your spirit. You'll find signed copies of my book, Gems of Healing. You'll find my brand new Oracle deck to help you tap into daily divine guidance. And there's some powerful mini courses designed to fit in your busy life and move you forward one gentle step at a time. So whether you're deep in grief, seeking spiritual growth, or just ready for a reset, there's something waiting for you right now. Just go to grieftogrowth.com/store, grief numeral 2 growth.com/store, and start exploring. Close your eyes and imagine. What if the things in life that cause us the greatest pain, the things that bring us grief, are challenges? Challenges designed to help us grow, to ultimately become what we were always meant to be. We feel like we've been buried, but what if, like a seed, we've been planted? And having been planted, we grow to become a mighty tree. Now, open your eyes. Open your eyes to this way of viewing life. Come with me as we explore your true, infinite, eternal nature. This is Grief to Growth, and I am your host, Brian Smith. Hi there, I'm Brian Smith. I want to welcome you to another episode of Grief to Growth. So whether this is your first time tuning in, you've been walking this path with me for a while, I'm glad that you're here. On this show, we're all about navigating life's most difficult moments. We talk about grief, we talk about loss, we talk about transformation, and we talk about uncovering deeper truths about who we are, why we're here, and where we're going. Today's guest is someone who speaks to the heart of what this journey is all about, rebuilding from the ashes with raw honesty, with hard-earned wisdom, and even a little humor. Lisa is the voice behind The Widow's Comeback, Lisa Woolery. She spent 2 decades in public relations before her world was turned upside down by the sudden death of her husband. Thrown into widowhood without warning, Lisa became a solo parent to two grieving tweens, and with time, grit, and grace, began to rebuild not just her family's life, but her own identity. In today's conversation, we'll explore Lisa's surprising confession that grief, as brutal as it was, made her a better mother, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. We'll unpack how grief stripped away her perfectionism, pushed her into unexpected spiritual leadership, and opened the door to healing generational wounds, including with her 82-year-old mother. Lisa brings us to the sacred everyday work of raising kids when no one else is coming, of hearing God not with her ears but with her body, and of reshaping her future from the ruins of her past. We'll also talk about her best-selling memoir, The Widow's Comeback, along with her 365-day grieving calendar and grief journal, resources that have helped many others walk their own path through loss. So by the end of this conversation, I think you'll come away with new ways to think about grief, not just as an ending, but as a complicated, sometimes even illuminating beginning. And don't forget after the episode to join me on my Substack, grieftogrowth.substack.com, where you'll find an article about today's episode, a space to leave your comments, and a community of people just like you navigating life after loss. So with that, let's welcome Lisa Woolery to Grief to Growth.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here to talk about grief, one of my favorite subjects.
Yeah, it's weird how that becomes our favorite subject after some of the things we've been through. Before we dive into grief, I'd like for you to tell us about your husband.
Okay. My husband was awesome and amazing. I know people use those words a lot,
Hmm.
but he was. We met when I was 14 and he was 17. We met at youth group when the eighth graders got to be introduced to the high school kids, and he was soon to be a senior. So he was like so cool. And I was like gangly with my braces, and it was kind of love at first sight. And so we dated off and on and then got married when I was 22 and he was 25. And we had a wonderful relationship. We actually had infertility issues. And so we spent our 30s having a lovely time as dinks, double income, no kids. And then when I was 39, we adopted my son from Russia. And then when I was 40, we adopted my daughter.
Hmm.
And Eric was a terrific husband, but he was just an amazing dad. He loved those kids so much, and he just really left an imprint on all of us.
Mm,
And we still remember and talk about him all the time. And I still, it's weird because he's been gone for 6.5 years now, but I
mhm.
still feel like he's part of everything. Um, so he was great.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that doesn't change, right? Even though it's been 6.5 years, he's still a part of your life.
Hmm.
So it's been 6.5 years, and how did he pass? You don't have to go into a lot of great detail, but I understand it was a sudden passing.
Hmm. Yeah, actually, he came home from work and I greeted him at the door because I always did. I still loved him that much. And I gave him a kiss and he said, I have so much to tell you about my day. And then
Mm,
he went into his home office to do some calls and emails and that kind of thing. And so I went and started making dinner and I was actually chopping broccoli and I didn't hear him anymore. So I thought he was doing emails. And then I went to check on him and I was going to tell him that a joke, which was dinner is so boring because it's broccoli because we were dieting. And then he would laugh and we'd do our Mrs. Dash options. But I opened the door and I found him slumped over and he had sudden heart failure and he
mm.
just had died.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. It's really interesting as we're having this conversation. I noticed that my interviews seem to go in patterns, and I've been getting a lot of people recently who have lost spouses, and specifically women who've lost their husbands. And my really good friend Lisa just lost her husband, Mike. It was actually 8 months ago yesterday. And it was kind of the same thing. He came home from work, he was doing some things, and then, had a massive heart attack while they were together. So you'd been together at that point for how long?
We had been married 28 years, but
Yeah.
together 36.
Yeah.
Like my
So
whole life, basically.
yeah, well, yeah, your whole life, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So for people, we're going to talk about how grief transforms us and some of the amazing things that have come out of it. But I want people to realize it's been a while. So what were those early days like when you found yourself on your own as a mother of two fairly young children?
I don't know a word to say except surprised.
Mm,
Like it was such a surprise, such a shock, such a turn of my life because he was my everything. He was my dinner partner. He was my college fun person. We
mhm.
chose our majors together. He helped me in my career. He was father to my kids. He was everything.
Yeah.
And so then I suddenly was left without him. And we had some interesting issues, an investigation and a delayed death certificate, and all of my assets were frozen for 3 months. So I also had no money.
Mm,
And like trying to navigate my grief and then help my kids with their grief. I realized later that I think I put my own grief on hold to help
mm.
my kids, which is fine. But then my grief kind of came out later, but I don't remember a lot of things that first year just because I was reeling from the surprise.
Yeah, kind of a fog that first year. I
Yeah.
think that's pretty common where you're just kind of doing the things it takes to get through. And then when you have children, you're gonna a lot of times people will prioritize the children over themselves, so you don't get a chance to process for a while. So it sounds like
Mhm.
that's what you experienced.
Yeah.
So you how did your kids process it at that time? What was it like for them as much as you can tell?
Well, I don't know. Like I'm like actually kind of grateful that my kids were tweens, even though I wish that their dad would have died when they were older. But
Hmm.
it was nice because we could get on a routine and I had a reason to get up. I had a reason to try.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just really poured into my kids in different ways. And I remember the night that Eric died, and I was sitting in my great room, and my aunt and uncle had come over, and I was waiting for my best friend to arrive, and all these things were going through my head. And I remember specifically stopping and pausing and thinking, I need to up my mom game because
Mhm.
a lot of weeks, Eric participated in the parenting like it's 75%. And and I mean, some weeks I would, but
Mhm.
he was just such a helper and such an equal part in the raising of them.
Mhm.
And so without him, things were a lot different. The kids didn't get their fun nights out with their dad. They didn't get to watch the Twilight Zone till 3 in the morning, making hot dogs while I slept. They didn't get like a lot of these fun things that they used to have, but
Mhm.
we tried to get back into the rhythm of family life. And although we no longer ate at the dinner table, for the first time in my life, we ate in front of the TV watching Little House on the Prairie. We needed Nellie Olson
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
because it was just too sad to be, to be at the table without that place being filled.
Right.
Um, One of the things that I found that we all participated in was tiring our bodies out. And tiring our bodies out helped us, like, helped our minds rest and helped
Mm.
us be able to sleep at night. So they would go to the park and just act like maniacs and just tire themselves out. Specifically, I remember my son who was 12. My husband and I used to joke that he processed life by feeling the ground with his body.
Mhm.
So, he would just do all kinds of things. And then I became obsessed not with 10,000 steps, but with 20,000 steps.
Oh, wow.
And I just needed to like get my angst out like that. And so at least on Sundays and then Wednesdays, because Wednesdays we were at our grief group, but then we got kicked out. You think they could like tolerate or know how to deal with a 12-year-old boy who was angry, but no. So they asked us not to return because he was a troublemaker, I guess. But so Sundays and Wednesdays, we'd go to the park at least, and we
Mhm.
would just be wild. I got my 20,000 steps though every day while they were at school, and just really like sometimes I'd send the kids outside if they were angsty. We had 4 acres at the time. And I'd be like, go outside and break things. And so we had this lawn for this wood lawn furniture like in little different areas in the yard, and they got to break them. They were allowed to do that to get their anger out.
Mhm.
Um, so that's one of the ways that I helped them is I let them experience their grief with their bodies.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think that, we talk about processing grief and processing it in different ways. And sometimes just letting that flow through our bodies is really helpful. I walk not 20,000 steps a day, but
Mhm.
I walk about 10,000 steps a day. And I found that really helped me. And so it's great that you and the kids were able to kind of work through that part of processing it before you move into the maybe the higher levels of what we want to call it. But I'm really curious, you said about getting kicked out of the grief group. Tell me about that.
Well, so I'll just tell you that my son's pooping time is like was right at dinner time. And
Hmm.
it would really irritate me because I'd have dinner on the table. He'd be like, I gotta go to the bathroom. And I didn't know because it started after my husband died. I didn't know if this was like that he didn't want to come to the dinner table,
Hmm.
that he was acting out,
Hmm.
or that he really had to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So our grief group was dinner time, and we'd all have pizza, and then we'd break up into our small groups, like age appropriate. And so one time, we probably attended 4 or 5 times, but like maybe the fourth time, they came in and said to me, actually, I was sharing about my grief.
Hmm.
And the woman in charge of my son's group came in and she's like, excuse me, your son's in the bathroom. And I'm like in front of everyone. And I had been at like processing, so I was irritated.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, he had to go to the bathroom. This is his poop time.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, you've got to go get him. So I went into the bathroom and I'm like, hey, Liam, are you almost done? Like, your group is waiting for you. And so he's like, no. So I came back and I said, well, he said he'd come out when he was done. And she's like, well, he's not allowed to be in the bathroom by himself. And I'm like, okay, so what, you want me to be in the men's bathroom? And then she said, "Well, we can't start the lesson until he's done." And I didn't know what to do, except
Mm,
for I know I'm sure I said something snarky like, deal with it. I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah,
So, and then I think we went one more time, and then I got this phone call saying that he was not welcome back, but my daughter and I were, and what my accommodation would be for him. And my accommodation was the F word coming out of my
yeah,
mouth. Like, I'm gonna return and process
yeah,
my grief while my son is like at a neighbor's house or something. I don't know. It just, I don't know. That was just kind of weird and inappropriate. And I don't
yeah.
know if I was inappropriate, but he was 12 and angry. So,
Yeah, and I'm not going to ask you to elaborate on or disclose who the group was or what the group was, but and the reason I really wanted to bring this up is because sometimes people don't give us what we need when we're in
mhm,
grief, and
mhm,
and every emotion is on the table. It could be anger, it could be guilt, it could be fear, it could be depression, it could be numbness, and I think especially for well, not especially for a kid, for all of us, anger is
mhm.
a very natural response.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Grief doesn't follow stages, timelines, or rules. And if you've ever wondered, am I doing this right? You're not alone. That's why I created the Grief Check In. It's not a test, there are no right or wrong answers. It's simply a gentle way to understand how grief may be showing up for you right now. In just a few minutes, you'll gain clarity and language for what you're experiencing without judgment, labels, or pressure to move on. If you're wondering where you are in grief, this is a safe place to look. Go to grieftogrowth.com/check-in. That's grief, numeral two, growth.com/check-in.
Mhm. Yeah. And he was, I think, very numb.
Hmm.
And that continued, and he was like apathetic. And I actually ended up about 2 years later sending him to military boarding school.
Hmm.
Just because he needed more than I could give him. He needed men and he needed accountability and this kind of thing. And actually, he's a senior and graduating. He's going to be a military chaplain.
Oh,
That
wow.
was a great move on my part.
Wow.
Um, so, just a little aside to all you moms or dads out there, like follow what you know is right.
Yeah.
Don't listen to other people. Like so many people, they said so many mean things to me about sending him there, and they still do.
Hmm.
But it was good for him, and he is going to be a fully functioning, contributing member of society because of it, and
Hmm.
as opposed to like a basement dweller, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the thing is, you have to, as you said, do what you know is right or what you feel is right. Your
Hmm.
intuition tells you. And the other thing, as kids process things differently, men, boys process things different from girls, women. So everybody's got to have their own way of processing things, and I think we need to honor that. And again, numbness or apathy can be a real response. I would think my daughter was 18 when my other daughter passed away, but I would think, especially like with teenagers, because I know one of the things about teenagers is they typically just want to be normal. They just want to be like not recognized as being different. And that's going to really throw a big monkey wrench in that.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah. And that feeling different started immediately. Like my husband died like a week before school was supposed to start, and my son was supposed to start middle school. So he
Mm,
started a week late. And
mm,
then he didn't have a dad. And then I couldn't go to both of the back to school nights. And I couldn't, do these things, dads with donuts. And these things were like all happening right at the beginning. And
right.
although we didn't really, that I remember, talk about that specific thing at the time, I know that like not having your dad you feel so conspicuous. Like I feel like still, like I'll walk in, especially like at church, and I don't have my husband with me, and I feel so conspicuous
Mm,
because everybody else has a husband, or like for my son, everybody else had a dad, even if the dad was divorced and lived in another house, they still have their dad.
yeah. Yeah. Now, you said that losing your husband actually made you a better mother in a sense. And I know
Mhm.
sometimes people will say, well, I became a better person in spite of this. You say because of this. So
Mhm.
explain that to people.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I the night Eric died, I'm like, I need to up my mom game.
Hmm.
And so I actually did. I tried really hard. And um we're pretty traditional people, and so we have like pretty traditional kinds of roles. The husband is the leader of the house, of the family, and then without him, I had to become the leader,
Hmm.
and I got to make different choices. And I mean, I don't know what it would have turned out to be if my husband wouldn't have died. I mean, it would have been great. He was a great leader. He was a wonderful man, but I look back and I know that it's a biblical reference, is that about generations and generational change, and like the sins of the fathers fall upon their kids and their kids and their kids. Like
Hmm.
alcoholism doesn't just affect the kids but also the grandkids because it affected the kid, and et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
And we didn't have alcoholism or anything, but we had some ways, like especially, well, both of our families had some dysfunction, like who doesn't? And so Eric and I were very traditional, like, you're doing this because we say so,
Hmm.
period. It wasn't a lot of how do you feel about it, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
And then Eric dies, and I have like zero leverage. I'm 5'2". And like at this point, the kids are as tall as me, and I don't really feel like I have a lot of anything behind, like oomph behind my
Hmm.
behind my words.
Hmm.
So but I also lost the taste of, like, well, I say so. And I remember specifically the first time it happened, we were driving in my husband's car, and I was taking it to get detailed, and because I was going to sell it. And Liam says, I don't want you to sell the car. Daddy promised it to me. And I said, well, no, I'm the mom. We're selling it.
Hmm.
And then I said, you know what? I'm not that mom anymore. So I said, why are you feeling so sad about it? Well, because dad promised me it, and it makes me sad that we're going to get rid of dad's car. And so I said, well, what if us selling dad's car helped us with our goals? Because we as a family had two goals. One was that I didn't have to go back to work, and one was that we got to stay in our house until they graduated from high school,
Hmm.
just like stability things.
Hmm.
And selling the car would be like some cash, especially since at the beginning I was so broke. And so I told him that, and I said, so what do you think about that helping us with our goals? And he goes, okay. And I said, when you're ready to drive, we'll buy you a car. And so that was like the first sort of moment that I remember
Hmm.
that I was going to be a changed mom.
Hmm.
And after that, I started being able to say things to my kids, like instead of, y- say a teacher calls, like that's never happened, but a teacher calls and the kid's in trouble. Instead of me just being like, you're on restriction. Instead, I can say things like, well, what happened and why? And let's talk about it. What is your input? If we're going to make a big change as the family, it wasn't just me and Eric making the decision, but it was my kids having input.
Hmm.
And generationally, that is not the kind of touchy-feely sort of families that either of us grew up in.
Hmm. Wow. So, you said it made you a better mother. How did it change you otherwise as a person?
Well, yes. I mean, I used to be perfect. Not anymore. I walk around with my flaws on the outside. I don't mind them anymore.
Hmm.
I have much more capacity for other people and their flaws. And I just am like way more calm, and I just have better relationships. I have less stress. It's weird that losing my husband, who
Mhm.
was my everything leader
Yeah.
would put me in a place where I'm so much calmer. But that's sort of the growth path that I've had.
Why do you think that is? How did that come about?
Well, I think that it has to do with my Christian faith.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that I rely on God to help me solve my problems instead of my husband to help me solve my problems.
Hmm.
And God is flawless, and my husband was flawed, and then I was flawed. So the two of us were really flawed.
Hmm.
But I feel like God has really helped me grow and helped me trust in Him. And when you trust in God, you don't have as much to fear and you don't have as much to worry about.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing how that happens, right? We have the
Hmm.
biggest tragedies of our life come around, and then we learn to trust more out of that tragedy.
Yeah,
So you mentioned you're a pretty traditional family, and I just interviewed someone. Actually, the episode just came out. She was very traditional. She is a very traditional Christian. She lost her husband, and she had some struggles because the church had told her this is the role of a woman, this is the role of a man. Did you have any trouble stepping into that role? You said you became a different kind of parent, but did you have any struggles with that?
I did not have any of those after Eric died, but
Hmm.
like before he died at church, like hearing that a woman has to acquiesce to the man kind of
Hmm.
thing. Like I think of a lot of churches, people forget that, the man is the leader of the house, but he treats his woman as Christ treats the church. I think
Right.
a lot of people forget that
The
second
last
half.
part's never talked about.
Right, right. Um, but one of the things that I was mad at God about was that I had to be the leader
Yeah.
because I didn't want to be the leader, and then I wasn't just the leader of my little family with my kids, but then I was the leader of my larger family. After my husband died, my brother died, and my dad died,
Mm-hmm.
and so then I have my 82-year-old mom
Mm-hmm.
who now I have to take care of her, and so. I moved her from a little town in Washington out to Kansas City where I live. And um, now I have to work with the dysfunctions that my mom and I have.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to learn how to get over them. And I have to learn how to lead her to a better, calmer place because she can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So then here I am, the leader. And then, that kind of made me mad because Eric was good with my mom and she respected him because he was a man. So I had to really learn how to like lean into how am I going to help my mom? And so basically what I learned, which is probably obvious to everyone, but not to me till I learned it, which is how I show up as a person is how whoever I'm with reacts. And so that was a real lesson to me that whenever I go see my mom, I have to be in the right spirit and I have to be kind. I'm the one who has to display all of this even though she's my mom. So like learning how to be the leader was hard, but I
Mm-hmm.
learned it and
Yeah.
I think I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. Learning hard things. Yeah.
Yeah,
That you touched upon, you said one of the goals was after your husband passed is that you'd be able to stay in the house. And I think you said not go back to work. How did that work
correct.
out for you? Were you able to stay home?
Yes, I once our assets were unfrozen, I had a really good financial advisor and he really helped me make that happen. We did end up moving out of the house at some point
Hmm.
because it was after my son went to boarding school. It was my daughter and I in a 6,700 square foot house on
Oh,
four
wow.
acres. So it was a little ridiculous and it was a lot of work. So we did end up right sizing, but it was it it was okay because I was trying to maintain stability. But
Right.
my daughter's in the same school. My son said I don't care as long as I come home and I have my room.
Hmm.
So yes, I was able to do that and I feel like although God sort of yanked the rug out from under me. I feel like he's given me a lot of blessings aside. Like I
Hmm.
don't have my husband anymore. I don't have my big fat paycheck.
Hmm.
I feel like he has blessed me with enough money. I always have enough money for everything that I need and want.
Yeah.
So that's been a real blessing for me.
So, getting really practical for a moment, what advice would you have for people who are married to prepare for something like this, in terms of the financial and all that stuff? And what if someone finds themselves in a situation? What advice would you have for them also?
Well, before the death happens, get that life insurance. It is so important because you don't want your mate to suddenly be the leader of the family and having all of that stress and pressure, and then having to go to work every
Mm,
day
mm,
or find a new job or replace your income. Like that life insurance is so important. And then the other thing I would say is make sure that both of the married people are on everything, on the bank accounts, on the electric bill. Oddly, the hardest thing is was the cell phone. And
oh,
actually, like 3 years later, they were still suing my husband even though he was dead and they knew he was dead. It just like be on, just partner up, be on everything, be co-signers. Um, that'll make everything a lot easier.
hmm,
And then to the person who finds themselves suddenly without their mate, I mean, I think that what you need to do is you need to find a good financial advisor. And I'm not talking about your brother-in-law. You
yeah,
need to go and you need to see someone who is unbiased and can sit you down and say, here is your reality. So maybe that means you have to go back to work, or maybe it means you don't right now, or maybe it means you need to invest in whatever, but
hmm.
it just really have somebody to guide you who isn't emotionally involved in your situation.
Yeah, thank you. That's very it's good to have that. And I know it's one of those things that we don't like to talk about and we don't like to think about, but we do find ourselves in those situations. And I'm learning about this, myself right now at my advanced age, that you've got to have these things in place,
Mhm.
trusts and all that kind of stuff again that we don't like to really think about. And having everybody's name on everything. It's different, and it's different by state. So in some
Yes.
states it does roll over automatically to the spouse. In some states it doesn't.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the other thing I would say is don't have debt.
Yeah, yeah,
But that's just a good practical thing for anyone.
yeah,
Have as little
exactly.
debt as possible.
Yeah. So you with Eric, you had a pretty uh I guess traditional relationship.
Hmm.
You weren't expecting this. What surprised you about yourself after you found yourself in this situation? What did you find out about Lisa that you didn't know before?
Well, I found out that I love adventures.
Hmm.
And I mean, I kind of knew that I liked adventures when Eric was alive because we always had so much fun. Like we'd make anything an adventure, like dieting. We'd like
Yeah, it sounds
have
like you
our
guys had a
little,
great lot of
yeah,
fun. Yeah.
yes. And so that I didn't lose that. And in fact, it grew. And I have done so many of these like super awesome traveling adventures. Like last year, I was invited to be a writer's in residence in France for 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And I got to, all I did all day was write in a chateau in like in the countryside in France.
Hmm.
And so it kind of freed up a part of me because I didn't have to stay home because Eric was a little bit of a homebody. And so I was allowed to like choose some things that I wanted to do. And I've just really gotten into traveling and I've just haven't said no to anything. Everything that's presented to me, I'm like, I'm doing it.
Hmm.
Even if it's Cleveland, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna have fun.
Yeah.
And so I really like I can go. In fact, I'm planning a trip to Rome. And then afterwards, I'm going to a writer's retreat. But I decided that since I'm going to be in Tuscany for a writer's retreat, why not go to Rome for a week? And I'm going by myself. and I know exactly what kinds of tours to sign up for, and I will have the greatest time.
Yeah.
So I've like almost turned into my grandma who traveled the world by herself after my grandpa died.
Hmm.
Um, so that's been a little surprising to me because I was always such a homebody with Eric.
Yeah. Now, I'm glad you shared that, but I would imagine again, right after Eric passed, could you even imagine you'd be here 6.5 years later? I mean, if someone had said, "Oh, Lisa, 6.5 years, you're gonna be a writer, you're gonna be traveling the world," what would you have said to them?
I'd be like, well, how would you do that without Eric? Then I did it.
Yeah. Well, again, what I like to do with this show is to give people hope, to give people vision, because when we're in that early part of grief, it feels like nothing is ever going to be right again, that I'll never be happy again. And I love talking to people like you who are a few years out, get a few years on this, that can say, "Hey, it's going to be okay."
It is. And I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I have days where I like really can't do anything because I'm so upset. Like, for
Sure.
example, I'm going to tear up a little bit right now because in a couple weeks, it would have been Eric's 60th birthday. And like,
Mhm.
that is really hitting me that like Eric is never going to be old. I
Yeah.
mean, 53 might be old to some of you listeners, but
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but if you are in a place where you are so desolate because you lost a beloved, whatever that beloved is, a
Hmm.
child, a husband, somebody really close to you, if you want to, if there's a little piece of you that wants to, you can. All you have to do is take about a step forward about every day. You
Hmm.
don't have to make a giant leap. You just have to take a little step. And that little step can be, hey, I'm going to make a homemade meal tonight. Or that little step can be, I'm just going to peek at an online dating app. I'm
Mm.
not going to do anything. I'm just going to peek. That little step could be, I'm going to open my journal and I'm going to write. You know what that little step is. If you can take it on most days, then you can find yourself 6 years later a best-selling author, traveling
Yeah.
the world and virtually having a great life. And that brings me to something weird that I'm going to say.
Mm.
I sometimes like I'll look in my photo roll on my phone and I'll see me before Eric died and I'll be like, "Oh, if you even knew what was coming and what you're going to have to walk through."
Right.
And then I'll look at me now and I look a little older, but then again, I am. And I just marvel at how life can still be great and life can still go on. And I sometimes look at the old me and I'm like, do I even want to be her anymore?
Hmm.
I mean, sure, I want Eric back. Like, I would do that in the blink of an eye. But how would it be with the new me and the old him?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, life just made me so different. And I would just say, like, try to embrace that. Try to just be you part two.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, Lisa, I know you said you're a woman of faith, and you mentioned maybe a little bit of anger toward God after Eric passed. How did your relationship with God evolve from that point?
Mhm. Well, I would say that I probably had the strongest faith of my life, and then Eric died. And then I was literally, God, like, I still believe in you and you're still part of my life, but I can't even with you right now. Like,
Hmm.
and I mean, I still went to church because church was really good to my kids. They like really embraced them and they were so helpful to them. But I had a hard time. Like, I had to walk in the sanctuary by myself and sit by myself for the first time ever in my life. And then I had to listen to people talk about how awesome God is. And like, I didn't feel that.
Hmm.
And for a long time, like I don't even know if I prayed. And then slowly my faith started coming back to me, and I just could hear the Holy Spirit a little bit. And then I started reading my Bible again, and I started just being more aware and allowing God in my life again. And is it okay if I read a scripture to
Absolutely.
you? Okay. So I came across this scripture. I was doing like the read through the Bible in a year, but it takes me 2.5 years. And and I came across this, and I was so mad that I called up my friend and read it to her, and I was like enraged.
Hmm.
It's Hosea 2:14 through 16. And God is talking to the Israelites who have been banished from Jerusalem. And he is talking to them how they can be with God again. But then I will win her back once again. I will lead her into the desert and speak tenderly to her there. I will return the vineyards to her and transform the valley of trouble into the gateway of hope. She will give herself to me there as she did long ago, when she was young, when I freed her from captivity in Egypt. When the day comes, says the Lord, you will call me husband instead of master.
Hmm.
And so like that just totally pissed me off, because I'm like, what, God, you're going to be my husband? Like, you're going to take me out for drinks. You're going to let me sit in your lap and cuddle with you. And I just was so mad about that.
Hmm.
And it just stuck in my mind. And I spent a year probably praying about it and resisting it. But over time, I began to realize that God meant not that he was going to be my last earthly husband. Like I still hold out hope that I might have a part two, another marriage. But
Hmm.
what I realized is that God was telling me is that I could trust him. I could trust him with every single thing that I trusted Eric with. And P.S., he had like way more power to have good outcomes than Eric did.
Hmm.
And so I like I'm still on that journey of like trusting God 100%. And although I feel like I'm there a lot, but I'm just a girl. So
Yeah.
I don't always have that trust. But I could tell you about a couple of times where I feel like it's a spiritual thing that happened
Sure.
um with God. So my son, as I've told you, struggled, and a certain year in his life, he has struggled so much that I was afraid that he would be able to even graduate from high school. And so I asked, like in a moment of desperation on my Facebook page, I'm like, everyone's been so good to us since Eric died, and you're always asking what you can do to help. Well, here's how you can help. Who wants to do a year-long prayer intervention for one of my kids? And I just got 30 people who immediately said yes. And so for the next year, we all prayed for him every week. And then
Hmm.
I'd send like a little picture or a verse or something like, don't forget to pray for Liam this week. And the transformation that happened in that kid's life was amazing. He went from just not caring about himself to asking for acne medication, for asking to have braces. These are things he refused before,
Hmm.
to deciding that he wants to join the army and that he wants to be a pastor. And just this change was so great. But I'll
Wow.
have to tell you this, in that year, I I probably got the most benefit from it. And it took a year before I saw anything. Like it was a long year of praying and not seeing improvement in Liam. Like it took like that whole year.
Hmm.
And I remember just being just despondent about it. Like I would start off my day like praying, and then I would end up on the floor crying. And just like, God, why? Why are you punishing him? Why are you punishing me? Like you took Eric, like he needs something. Give it to him. And I didn't see it for a long time. It was all
Hmm.
happening like on the inside. And so one night I went to bed, and in the middle of the night I woke up, and God spoke to me. And I didn't hear it. This is why I know it was God. Like, this has never happened to me before. It wasn't like I heard with my ears. I
Hmm.
like heard with my whole body, like sort of vibrating. And I just woke up and I felt like this presence. And then I heard in that weird hearing way,
Hmm.
don't you think you can trust me for Liam yet?
Hmm.
And I went, oh, okay. Like, and then like the next morning, I was like, okay, that was really weird.
Hmm.
And like that coupled with that was like at almost the end of the year when I didn't feel like Liam was improving, but then at the end, like all this stuff came together like that, and his career choice and his request for the braces and the acne medication, blah blah blah. There's like all of a sudden, it's like overnight he blossomed.
Hmm.
And so that's like really stuck with me, obviously, because I've never heard not with my ears, but like I heard with my body.
Yeah.
And then so we moved from Southern California, where I lived most of my life, to Kansas City 8 months before my husband died. And so I had to learn how to do winter.
Hmm.
I hadn't had any experience with snow and, this kind of thing. And then, here we are, like the seventh winter. And we had moved to a new house, and the driveway was a hill. And so I thought I can do this hill in winter. And I like had these ideas in my head, and I know what winter is like. I wasn't really afraid of it anymore, but then we had ice storms in Kansas City and the coldest winter and the most snow in like 28 years or something last year. And my daughter, she was like 15 or 16 at the time. Oh, and you're allowed to drive at 15
Hmm.
here. So when I tell you the story, so she left to go to work, and I saw that we are going to have all these storms, and we talked about it, but I'm like, "Oh, you're going to get out of work right at the beginning of the snow. So you'll be home. You'll be fine. Just drive home." And I didn't even think about the fact that I might need to come pick her up or whatever.
Hmm.
So we get an ice storm. So I learned that on the weather app, when we have these like angry, like blue slash lines, that's an ice storm. But like
Yeah.
I hadn't experienced that yet. I'd only experienced like the nice, gentle snow. And so that was what happened before the snow. So there was like a coat of ice on the ground and then snow on top of it. So my daughter calls, she's like 20 minutes away. And she's like, "Mom, I don't feel comfortable driving home." And I'm like, "Well, I'm so glad that you called me. That's like what you're supposed to do."
Hmm.
So I said, "I'm going to call an Uber." Oh, well, actually, I didn't say that yet. So I had my son walk down the driveway. It was Christmas break, so he was home. And he like slid right down so that I couldn't get my car out. So I was new in this neighborhood and I didn't know any neighbors. So I said, "Well, I'll call you an Uber." And I tried to get an Uber for 20 minutes and I could get nothing. And so in frustration, I turned my phone off. I threw it and I said, "Fine, God, you want to be my husband? Get her home." And then I got my senses and I picked my phone back up, and but my Uber app was off, and I called my friend and I'm like help me brainstorm here. So we were like thinking that maybe I just book her a hotel room across the street and she could just stay there until I could come get her.
Hmm.
And then my I got this message that said Quan will pick up your ride. But my Uber app was off. And it was like this Uber alert that I had never seen before. And I use Uber a lot. And I was like, oh, just kidding, God. Like,
Yeah.
and so Katie got home. Like, I literally was waiting for her on the front porch. Like, I was just beside myself because I felt like here I am, the mom and the dad. I can't even get out of my driveway. I don't have anyone to call. I mean, I was about to start calling my old neighbors, which I know they would have helped me, but when you're in that situation, you
Yeah.
feel different about calling people. But so with those and like other little incidents that have happened, I'm really learning to trust God as my husband, like as the person who's going to solve my problems. And that's
Hmm.
been just a really good journey for me.
Awesome. Now, I know you had a breakthrough with your mother, I guess based upon the grief that you're going through. So tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, my mom likes to be the center of attention, and everything sort of revolves around how she feels about it.
Hmm.
And so she doesn't always have a lot of understanding for others and what they're going through. And she wasn't um super amazing for when Eric died. And she's since apologized because she now understands what it's like to be a widow because she is one now.
Hmm.
Um, and that caused some anger with me. And there's been some incidents in my life where she hasn't been what I've needed her to be because she can't see what I'm going through unless she's gone through it. And so it's just really like has affected the way I felt about her. And so I tend to get a little angry and impatient. And so when my mom moved out here, I was angry and impatient. Like I was the usual me, she was the usual her. But then through the months that after she moved here, she lives in this beautiful retirement community half an hour away. And so when I see her, I now pray and I like listen to praise music just so I'm like in the right spirit for when I show up with her because I've prayed about it a lot and I've just tried to embrace like what is a leader. A leader doesn't mean that I go in with my needs. A leader goes in sharing what others need. And a leader goes in and fills the holes. The
Hmm.
leader doesn't sit and wait for their holes to be filled. And I've had on my way to my mom's house, I've had like literal spiritual warfare in my car where like the thought of just being done with her pops into my head and I'm like, no, get behind me. No, like just this like argument with, I don't know, a demon, myself, I don't know,
Hmm.
whatever. But I've just really learned that I am the leader now. And so I show up leading. I don't show up waiting to be led. And I'm kind of excited about that,
Hmm.
actually.
Hmm.
And I'm kind of excited that I get to be the leader of my family now. So I get to say, this is how we treat each other. And I'll even tell my mom that. I'll be like, no, we are having kind words today. Or, but I get to do that. Like I get to set the tone
Yeah.
instead of waiting for my mom to set the tone. And then it's not a great tone. So I have I was mad at God for a while that I had to be the leader,
Hmm.
but now I'm like, well, maybe I can be a better leader.
Hmm.
And so I try to lead with godliness and kindness, and it's been working. And actually, so as we tape this, it's early January, and I'm happy to say that this was my best Christmas that I've had since Eric died. And it's
Hmm.
actually the best Christmas I've had in a long time because Christmas is always with my mom kind of about how she wants it to go. And then after Eric died, it was about how she wants it to go. And then Eric wasn't there. And, all of the holiday things are so hard when you lose someone.
Yeah.
But I got to be the leader this Christmas. And with healing, and with leadership, it was an amazing time. We all laughed. We had a great time. There were not even any little arguments. And so,
Yeah. You've
yeah,
you've transformed. You become
yeah,
you've stepped up. That's awesome. So
yeah.
let's talk about the widow's comeback. Tell people
Okay.
what they can expect from your memoir.
Yeah, yeah. So I have even not just my memoir, but I have a ministry called The Widow's Comeback.
Hmm.
I'm on Facebook. I do live prayer there. I do a post a day to help you process what you might be going through as a widow. And then I have some tools that I've created. The
Hmm.
Widow's Comeback is my memoir, and it's about the first 2 years after my husband died. And if you read it, you have to be ready to laugh. and cry and then laugh so hard you cry. So I just really I took some humor and I put it in because I think that in processing, it's good to be able to laugh. So I just really like leaned into like the shit show that I was and I told the truth and I told like really what it's like to be a widow and some of the funny things that happened. I started dating and this kind of thing because a lot of the widow's memoirs that I've read were sort of like the perfect widow and but I like talked about a lot of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I want widows to not feel alone. I don't want widows to feel like they are the only ones that are like total shit shows because man, like it's all bets are off when you're a widow. Like you have to rediscover, you have to learn, and it can be funny.
Right.
So I have my memoir that I want to bring widows into the experience with me so that they don't feel, like I said, they don't feel alone. And then along with that, I have two companion pieces. I have a grief calendar. So basically, what I do with the grief calendar is I teach you how to plan your month because you have all kinds of landmine days. Like, for example, I said that Eric's birthday is coming up, his
Right.
60th birthday. So I already have planned what I'm going to do. And then that way I don't have to worry, just know that that date is coming up and worry about it.
Right.
So even if I end up doing something different on the day, which I've done before, at least like I can plan for it. And then when I start to like get stressed that, oh my gosh, it's Eric's birthday, I know I'm going out for sushi. But he liked to take us for sushi dates.
Mm-hmm.
So my daughter and I are going to sushi. Like
Mm-hmm.
I know that. So I don't have to worry about it. So, and then in the grief calendar, I also have like a really impactful exercise for each month to really help you process things like in-laws, people who aren't helpful, just some things that people aren't talking about.
Right.
And then my third piece is actually, I think will be out maybe by the time this airs, and it's a guided grief journal, and it has some opportunities to process your grief with God. So it's has some Bible verses and some things to think about. If you are a faithful person, that would be helpful to you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I have, but I also want to say what I have coming up.
Yeah, sure.
I have a trilogy coming out of like life reinvention. It's about three women who lose their husbands in a plane crash and how each one of the widows walks their healing path. And I'm very excited about that. I wrote the first one actually while I was in France. She actually runs away from her life and goes to France.
Hmm.
And like that's the first book. The second book I'm about to start, it's called Pickleball Picadillos, and it's about a woman who kind of heals and does her transformation by dating everybody on the pickleball team. And then the third, I'm not quite sure what that's going to be yet, but so I have become a writer for widows
Yeah.
with my ministry and with my skills. I'm trying to create things to help widows process their grief and know that they're going to be okay.
That's awesome. It's awesome. So yeah, as we come to the end of our time together, I want to thank you for what you've done, for what you shared, and for what you're doing, and for bringing hope to people that are going through what might feel like the end. I can only imagine. I was talking to someone earlier, as I said, I've been speaking with a lot of widows lately for some reason, and they were saying, if you're very young and you're widowed, you kind of feel like, maybe you start over again. If you're very old and you're widowed, you kind of feel like, well, I'm toward the end anyway. But if you're in that middle range, that might be the most difficult time to lose someone. Because you might feel like I'm kind of coming toward the end. So I appreciate what you're doing to help people that are in that space. Like you can reinvent yourself. It's not too late.
Mhm.
Anything that I didn't ask you today that you wanted to talk about that you wish I had asked you?
Well, actually, what you just said, I want to address.
Yeah.
The day after Eric died, I was 50 when he died. And I was walking down the hall, and I remember specifically where I was when this really mean voice came into my head, and it was my own voice. And
Mm,
I said to myself, well, I guess your life is over.
yeah.
I mean, it was a good life, but you're 50. Like, what do you have in store for you? And I can say, if you are 40, if you're 30, if you're 50, if you're 60, you have you like your life is not over. You get to do what you want. Like you're going to walk through some really hard times, but you still get to choose
Hmm.
and choose to have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. You get to make a choice. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Lisa, thanks so much for being here today. Again, thank you for what you're doing. It's been a pleasure getting to know you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your podcast. I listen to it when I'm going to sleep sometimes.
I hear that a lot. I guess I put people to sleep, but yeah, thank you
No,
for that.
podcasts are good because they get your mind off of
Yeah, yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, have a
Thank
great
you.
rest of your afternoon.
Thanks.
Bye. Grief doesn't follow stages, timelines, or rules. And if you've ever wondered, am I doing this right? You're not alone. That's why I created the Grief Check In. It's not a test, there are no right or wrong answers. It's simply a gentle way to understand how grief may be showing up for you right now. In just a few minutes, you'll gain clarity and language for what you're experiencing without judgment, labels, or pressure to move on. If you're wondering where you are in grief, this is a safe place to look. Go to grieftogrowth.com/check-in. That's grief, numeral 2, growth.com/check-in. Have you ever wished for gentle guidance or comforting word exactly when you need it most? Well, I've created my Love Lives On Oracle deck just for that purpose. Now, this isn't a deck that's about predictions, it's about connection. Every card has been thoughtfully designed to guide you through life's toughest moments, to illuminate your path and help to remind you that you're never alone, that your loved ones are always there right beside you. So, whether you're seeking clarity, comfort, or a loving message from beyond, each card is here to speak directly to your soul. And along with the deck comes a downloadable PDF guide that you can use that will give you an affirmation for the day, something to reflect on, and even an activity to do to keep you connected to your loved one. So check out the Love Lives On Oracle deck today. You can get it at stan.store/grief to growth. Stan.store, STAN.store/grief, numeral 2, growth.